Tonight, an ABC News special report, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, a dark new turn for a deeply divided nation.
America responding to the chilling images of a moment in U.S. history now seen around the world. Tonight, inside the investigation into the attempt on Donald Trump's life. The gunshots erupting during his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. The microphone picking up the cries of people yelling to get down. Those critical seconds when the Secret Service rushed the stage, shielding Trump until it was safe to move. Authorities identifying the gunman, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks. A law enforcement officer revealing stunning new details about the suspect. Telling ABC News a local police officer was on that roof and confronted the shooter just before he opened fire on the former president. And we're hearing from the photographer who became a witness to history, capturing the haunting images of the bullets sailing by the head of Donald Trump. That moment he reaches for his right ear, blood clearly visible on his fingers. Tonight, the hero firefighter, husband and father of 2 daughters. His family says he used his body to shield them from the gunfire. 24 hours after the shooting, Donald Trump pushing forward with his campaign and the Republican National Convention. The former president revealing he considered not going to Milwaukee today. What changed his mind? And you just heard President Biden addressing the nation. His message to America tonight.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for what has been a very disturbing 24 hours in American history. The attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Gunfire erupting at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Tonight, we will take you inside the terrifying moments. The investigation, of course, now picking up speed. Federal authorities revealing new details at this hour about the alleged gunman. The images now seen around the world, Donald Trump taking the stage before thousands of cheering supporters. 8.5 minutes later, gunshots fired into that crowd. The former president seen grabbing his ear, ducking for cover. His microphone picking up some of the screams of the people behind him. The Secret Service rushing onto the stage, heard giving orders, then loading him into a nearby SUV. Law enforcement revealing details about the suspected shooter tonight, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, described as lonely and quiet, acting on his own. Authorities say he was perched on a rooftop. A law enforcement officer telling ABC News a local police officer was on that roof and confronted the shooter just seconds before he opened fire on the former president. Reports that officer then fell, the shooter then turning back to begin firing toward the president. Tonight, we'll hear from the New York Times photographer Doug Mills, who captured the spectacular image of that bullet flying so close to the former president's head. Martha Raddatz is standing by, reporting on how, for the first time, a Secret Service sniper took down a would-be assassin. A disturbing 24 hours in America, as I said. So much of this investigation still unfolding. Questions about the gunman, his possible motive, the Secret Service, and security at that rally. And, of course, how will this now impact the race for president? We're going to begin tonight with this special, and ABC's Rachel Scott, who was there at the rally when the shots were fired.
Tonight, these are the images now seared into the minds of the country and the world. The attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump.
You don't mind if I go off teleprompter, do you?
It was roughly 8.5 minutes after he got onto the stage. A shooter taking aim as the former president was speaking in front of thousands at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, just outside Pittsburgh. You are about to hear the gunfire.
I want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
You hear several pops and see the former president grabbing his ear, then ducking for cover behind the podium. Secret Service rushing the stage, creating a human shield around former President Trump. Shots ringing out. Trump's microphone picking up the sound of the Secret Service agents in those critical moments. Listen.
Moving his hair. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Move. Go.
The Secret Service agents surrounding the former president, asking if they are ready to move.
You ready?
Then saying, shooters down. And are we good to move?
Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move?
We're clear.
Let's move. Let's move.
We're clear.
The agents then helping former President Trump to his feet. You can hear him say, "Let me get my shoes."
Let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir. I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes, sir.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we gotta move to the bus. Move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
The agents and the former president all now standing, his face bloodied, and then pumping his fist to the crowd. The crowd cheering, former President Trump saying fight. Agents moving the former president off the stage, down the stairs to a waiting armored SUV. One more fist pump from the former president before he's rushed to the hospital. We were in the crowd, screams and pandemonium as we ducked for cover.
We're okay. We heard what we appeared to be gunfire coming. The former president was rushed off the stage. Right now, we're at Secret Service. He's being escorted into his vehicle. This was a chaotic moment that just played out right here in Pennsylvania. People running and rushing to the ground as they heard those apparent shots fired.
And this new angle as the scene unfolds. As the president is being protected by Secret Service, the camera turns to the stands. Urgent calls for a doctor. Someone in the crowd had been shot, pointing to a man who needs help. Moments later, a man carried out by officers. People at the rally helping one another. 2 people were injured. One man, 50-year-old Corey Comparator, a firefighter, was killed. Tonight, his family and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro paying tribute, saying he died a hero.
Corey loved his community, and most especially, Corey loved his family. Corey dove on his family to protect them last night at this rally.
And tonight, these extraordinary images captured by a New York Times photographer, Doug Mills, appearing to show the path of a bullet as it whizzed by the former president, circled in red. His life saved, perhaps by a simple turn of his head. In this next picture, Trump moving to touch his ear, and in a third, blood on his hand.
Oh, unbelievable.
Chaos as thousands were running for cover.
Oh, unbelievable.
Just hours ago, this area was lined with Trump supporters. They entered that tent right there to be screened by Secret Service, going through metal detectors, their belongings detected. Now, this is the space where you have Trump supporters that are leaving, panicked and confused, as Secret Service agents rush us out of this area and back to our cars.
The crowd in disbelief.
Tell me what you saw and what you heard. You said that you heard the popping sounds and you got down?
Sounds. At first you think like maybe firecrackers, but it continued, and then somebody yelled, "Get down." We got down, and we huddled, and we started praying.
Yeah, I saw the man that was hit in the head, and there was a lot of blood, and I knew there was no way he was going to survive that.
We just heard like a bullet, and you just seen him like swipe his ear there, and the next thing you know, you heard other bullets, and he fell.
Overnight, former President Trump writing on Truth Social, "I was shot with a bullet that pierced the upper part of my right ear. I knew immediately that something was wrong and that I heard a whizzing sound, shots, and immediately felt the bullet ripping through the skin. Much bleeding took place, so I realized then what was happening." Tonight, authorities believe the gunman, armed with an AR-style weapon, fired from this roof, a building just outside the security perimeter of the rally, about 400 feet from where Trump was speaking. Moments before, some in the audience spotting the gunman. You can see here a Secret Service sniper positioned on the red roof right by the stage. When shots rang out, that sniper taking aim, firing on the gunman, killing him. Authorities believe this image shows the gunman lying on the roof.
You can see the guy down.
As well as these aerials believed to be the suspected gunman, according to a law enforcement official briefed on the investigation. Today, he was identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks at Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Investigators trying to piece together details about his life and a possible motive. We know he was a registered Republican, and according to FEC records, Thomas Crooks donated $15 to a progressive group in January of 2021. Today, President Biden with this plea.
I urge everyone, please, don't make assumptions about his motives or his affiliations. Let the FBI do their job and their partner agencies do their job.
Biden and Trump speaking on the phone after the shooting, Last night in front of the country, Biden saying he had tried to call Trump. Later, they were able to connect. Biden today describing their conversation as short but good. And tonight, former President Trump with this message. In this moment, it's more important than ever that we stand united and show our true character as Americans, remaining strong and determined and not allowing evil to win. Tonight, we are hearing from former First Lady Melania Trump for the first time, writing on Truth Social, "When I watched that violent bullet strike my husband, Donald, I realized my life and Barron's life were on the brink of devastating change. I am grateful to the brave Secret Service agents and law enforcement officials who risked their lives to protect my husband. I commend those of you who have reached out beyond the political divide. Thank you for remembering that every single politician is a man or woman with a loving family." His daughter Ivanka Trump writing online, "I love you, Dad, today and always." And his son Eric Trump telling ABC News his father is the toughest man I have ever met. Tonight from the Oval Office, President Biden with a message for the nation.
I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. We're neighbors, we're friends, co-workers, citizens, and most importantly, we're our fellow Americans. We must stand together.
The address from the Oval Office just a short time ago. Let's bring back in Rachel Scott, who is still in Butler, Pennsylvania for us. And Rachel, we know that Donald Trump has landed in Milwaukee at this hour. The Republican National Convention begins tomorrow. And so many of the images that the country, the world has seen in the last 24 hours, the images you saw firsthand reporting right there at that rally, will now define the campaign for Donald Trump right through November.
Exactly, David. These are not only the images that are seared into the minds of Americans, these are the images that are now going to fuel Donald Trump's campaign. An image of the former president, the presumptive Republican nominee, bloodied with his fists up in the air, surrounded by Secret Service agents as he's rushed down those stairs and into that armored vehicle where he went to a local hospital for treatment. The former president moving forward full steam ahead with plans to attend the Republican National Convention tonight, and President Biden vowing to promise every single resource necessary to ensure the safety of former President Donald Trump, David.
And personally, Rachel, as someone who has covered this campaign for us day in and day out, you were right there in that crowd with the rest of reporters who had gathered there. Can you describe for us the scene, if you will, and of course, the very obvious questions that you have not only as a reporter, but as someone who has been to these rallies about security? I know the Secret Service and authorities being praised for getting the former president off that stage quickly. But now that we know just how close that shooter came and that he was perched on a rooftop overlooking that rally, there are many questions ahead.
So many questions, David, and the primary one is how exactly did a suspected gunman get that close to the former president of the United States? I have been to almost every single campaign rally this cycle. I can tell you there are extraordinary layers of security. You have to pass through metal detectors. Your bags are then screened by Secret Service. There are certain items that are even prohibited from people taking into these rallies. In many cases, you feel safe and secure just by the amount of law enforcement that are present at these rallies, the presence of Secret Service there as well. David, initially, we didn't know what exactly those popping noises were. We were told to just rush to the ground to cover our heads. You had some people shouting gunfire, gunfire. You had the screams not only of adults, but also some children that were there with their parents attending this rally. This was an open space. We were on a fairground. There was nowhere to run. There was nowhere to go. We had no idea where exactly the gunfire was coming from, what direction it was coming from. The screams, I can still hear them piercing in my brain at this hour, just hours after that gunfire erupted there at that rally. It was stark. It was terrifying for so many people there. And what you heard there from that woman, so many people just praying, not only praying during that moment that they would make out safely, but praying that there's a better way forward for this country, David.
Rachel Scott here for our special tonight. Rachel, thank you. We do have remarkable new reporting here tonight emerging about the critical few moments just before that shooting started. A law enforcement officer now telling ABC News that a local police officer was on the roof of that building and actually confronted the shooter just seconds before he opened fire on the former president. It's believed the officer then fell when the shooter turned to him and aimed his weapon at the officer. Authorities believe he then turned back the suspect and began firing in the direction of the former president. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, a law enforcement source telling ABC News that a local police officer was on that roof and confronted the shooter seconds before he opened fire on the former president. The Butler County Sheriff telling us late today a police official told him that a Butler Township police officer was vaulted up to the roof where the shooter was perched, adding the suspect quickly turned and aimed his gun at the local officer, forcing him to retreat and fall down. Moments later, that suspect firing several shots toward Trump. Sources tell ABC News that a short time before the former president took to the podium, local authorities were alerted to suspicious activity on the outside of the perimeter and were in the process of looking for a suspect.
I am aware that law enforcement had responded to a number of reports of suspicious activity.
Ryan Knight attended the rally and saw the shooter open fire.
The guy beside me all of a sudden says, "This guy got a gun," and points. I look over at the AGR building, and there's a guy going prone, laying down on the AGR roof. At that point, I look over, guy starts taking shots at the president.
And tonight, he's raising serious questions.
My main thought is why the Secret Service was not on top of that building.
Investigators are now trying to figure out how the suspect made it up to the roof. Here's the shooter located less than 400 feet from the podium. The shooter is outside of the security perimeter, which flows from the magnetometer tents where the crowd came through as they were checked for weapons. The Secret Service snipers who were part of the team responsible for protecting former President Trump were perched at a number of elevated locations themselves. Photographs and video captured precisely where they were. Law enforcement sources telling ABC News the Secret Service sniper faced a harrowing split-second decision. Once the sniper noticed the suspect was on the rooftop, he had to determine whether the man posed a threat. And when the shots were fired, it became apparent, and the sniper opened fire, killing the suspect. The security breach all the more maddening because senior federal law enforcement officials have been warning for months that the threat environment is perhaps as dangerous as it was before 9/11. In recent days, we spent time with the Secret Service as they prepared for the RNC and DNC conventions, watching them in high-speed motor vehicle training and how they would respond to a terrorist attack. They were clear they understood that the nation faced urgent threats.
We have to train from the lone wolf gunman all the way up to possibly state-sponsored terrorist attacks.
Pierre Thomas with us now as well. And Pierre, I wanted to go back to that new reporting tonight that a law enforcement source has told ABC News that a local police officer actually had time to confront the shooter on the roof. This was just moments before he opened fire on the former president. Obviously, this would suggest that authorities might have been just seconds away from possibly, stopping all of this. But as you reported, the source saying that officer then fell and the suspect was able to then turn back toward the rally and the former president.
That's right, David. There was apparently a desperate attempt to stop the shooter before he got those shots off. But the critical question is how that shooter was able to get on the roof in the first place unimpeded, David.
We heard a couple of things from President Biden today that were striking, Pierre, when it comes to the Secret Service. First, he said that he has instructed the Secret Service moving forward that they have all of the resources they need to continue to keep former President Donald Trump safe. He also called for a full and sweeping review of this rally. He said he'll make the results public. And he asked immediately for a sweeping review of security for the Republican National Convention, which, of course, starts tomorrow. President Biden making it very clear that the Secret Service needs to keep Donald Trump safe.
Right now, everything is being looked at in this extraordinarily dangerous threat environment. The president is also calling for an independent investigation into what took place on that Pennsylvania field, David.
And then about the questions for the Secret Service themselves, Pierre. I know many were applauding the Secret Service for their quick action. The world has now seen those images of them getting the former president off the stage. What are your sources telling you about the very real questions moving forward about how that gunman was able to get up on that roof, not noticed until it's been reported witnesses actually looked up and saw a suspicious person, and now you're reporting tonight that an officer might have confronted them, had some sort of interaction, but the fact that they got there in the first place so close to that security perimeter?
Well, David, members of Congress are calling on the Secret Service director to appear before Congress on July 22nd. They're demanding answers. We're told by the Secret Service that she will comply with all questions. She will try to get answers. They know they have to be more transparent than they've been, David.
That said, law enforcement did jump into this very difficult and terrifying situation to watch unfold live for many people across this country. And there is a lot of gratitude for the work they did in the moments when they were desperately needed. Pierre Thomas on the questions moving forward. Pierre, thank you. Of course, the investigation into the gunman is fast moving. What we're learning tonight about the suspect, described as lonely and quiet by those who knew him. Authorities say his motive is still unclear. He was armed with an AR-style rifle purchased legally by his own father some time ago. And tonight, what's now been found in the gunman's vehicle and inside the home. Here's our senior investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, in Pennsylvania tonight.
More than 24 hours after the attempted assassination of former President Trump, investigators know the suspect and they know his weapon. What they don't know is the most important thing, why he did it in the first place. 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, seen here in his yearbook photo in an American flag T-shirt, drove more than an hour from his home just south of Pittsburgh to a rooftop overlooking a rally where Trump was speaking. He worked at a nursing home. Records show Crooks had no military background. The ATF traced the AR-style rifle he used to try and kill Trump, and sources told ABC News it was purchased legally by his father in 2013. The bomb squad cordoned off his home in Bethel Park. Authorities searched his car at the scene in Butler and his home, telling ABC News they found what appeared to be rudimentary explosives in both locations, one source saying they look like grenades. CNN is reporting that Crooks' father told them he was trying to figure out what the hell is going on, but would wait until I talked to law enforcement before speaking about his son. Neighbors are stunned the alleged would-be assassin lived among them.
I guess in today's day and age, you just never really know somebody at all anymore, and it's kind of shocking.
When we pulled up, said we couldn't get on the street, so I thought it was an accident. Then I find out something different, that the young man is the gentleman that shot at Mr. Trump. How sad for his parents.
I was stunned. I mean, where has America gone to now? The country's been never so divided, okay? Everyone needs to go and take a step back, relax. If you have differences with a candidate, you do it at the voting booth, you know? You don't take action like this clown did.
I want to be put on the map, but not for something like that. Like anyone else, I want to be able to say, you know, hey, yeah, I'm from Bethel Park. We really did that great thing. Well, this isn't such a great thing.
Crooks, seen here at his graduation ceremony in 2022. Fellow students say he was smart and a loner who was rejected by the rifle team, in part for being such a bad shot. It was considered dangerous.
I want to say he was a loner more because he was quiet, but like he was just bullied. Like he was bullied so much. He was just made fun of, I guess, for the way he dressed. He'd wear hunting outfits sometimes. He would always wear a mask, even after COVID. He wore a mask. Like you could look at him and you would be like, something's a little off. That's how I could describe it.
Investigators are now trying to search his phone. They're looking for any misinformation he may have been consuming and whether that played any role. So far, though, they say they've uncovered no links to any extremist organizations.
So let's bring in our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky. And Aaron, authorities are pouring through all of that material tonight, of course, still searching for a motive. And one of the things that you reported in that was so striking is that in looking at his social media profile and what they've been able to get access to so far, there are no sort of flags that point to any sort of motive here, at least not yet.
There aren't, David, and what's remarkable is how unremarkable this shooter seems to have been. This young man, 20 years old, doesn't have a criminal record, doesn't have any mental health history that the FBI has found. He did not appear on the FBI radar. He was not on a Secret Service watch list that would have prevented his entry into the Trump rally. And as you say, they've done some preliminary digital history searches, and they found nothing threatening. A little disinformation, maybe some conspiracy theories, but nothing that pointed to an obvious motive. So the authorities would urgently like to do two things. They have his phone, and they have yet to get into it. So they've sent it to the FBI analytics office at Quantico, Virginia, hoping that the phone contains some clues. They're also trying to piece together a timeline of the shooter's life in the hours, days, and weeks before the attempted assassination on former President Trump's life. David, they're hoping something in that timeline will give them the clues they need to establish a motive.
In addition to that, Aaron, there has been some early reporting that he was registered as a Republican, and this would have been his first presidential election, given his age, but that he'd also donated a small amount, $15 or so, to a progressive political group of some sort.
It's in somebody matching that name, similar address, $15 to a progressive organization before he was even of age eligible to vote. So the FBI doesn't see anything obvious there either, like a political motivation, but he certainly carried out a historic act of political violence, David.
And one more question for you, Aaron. We know so far that this weapon, an AR-style rifle, was in fact legally purchased and was owned by his father, purchased some years ago?
In 2013 by his father, and what the FBI hasn't been able to quite establish yet, although they've spoken to his father, and by all accounts the family is cooperating with the investigation. They're not sure whether the shooter may have stolen it or taken it improperly from his father, whether it was given to him, whether he had ready access to it. We know he tried to join a rifle club in his high school, but he was not allowed to join because the instructor said he was a bad shot, and it just would have been too dangerous for him to join. An AR-style rifle is not the weapon of a marksman, a sharpshooter, but it is effective in spraying bullets, as you know, David.
As we saw this weekend, Aaron Katersky with us again tonight. Aaron, thank you. Of course, the dramatic images of a wounded Donald Trump recalling another dark period in American history more than 4 decades ago now, the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. President Reagan leaving the Washington Hilton Hotel after giving a speech in March of 1981. You'll remember it was John Hinckley Jr. opening fire, wounding the president, the Secret Service forcing him into his limousine, rushing him to the hospital. Now, more than 4 decades later, new images defining this new and troubling chapter. New York Times photographer Doug Mills, who has documented every president since Ronald Reagan, and he was right near that stage last night, just a few feet, in fact, away from the former president. Mills captured those chilling photos, one appearing to show one of those bullets coming very close to the president's head. I spoke to Doug Mills just before we came on tonight. Doug, thank you for being here tonight. I know you have been photographing presidents since 1983. You were in what's called the buffer area, that small area, just a handful of photographers, I presume 3 or 4 of you. I'm curious, Doug, how close were you to the former president, and describe what happened when you knew this was suddenly taking such a dark turn?
Yeah, David, I was part of that small pool that sits right up in the buffer zone, which is just feet from, and sometimes just inches from the podium. And the moments right before the bullets rang out, I was literally looking up at this huge flag that was up above him while he was speaking. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try and get some pictures of that flag flying. And then he gestured to his right, looked over, and all of a sudden the shots rang out. And it was pop, pop, pop. And I was like, oh, my gosh. And so as I looked up, I kept taking pictures at the same time. And then when I saw him fall behind the podium, I thought, oh, dear God, he's been shot. So I immediately ran over to the left and looked around and tried to get my eye on the president where he was. And by the time, in those split seconds, he was already covered and surrounded by members of the Secret Service who were, blanketing him in case the shots were going. And there was complete chaos around us. I couldn't see him. And, I'm thinking, is he okay? What's happened to him? They were lifting the former president up to his feet. And I thought, oh, God, he's alive. Thank God. And then he started to gesture with his fists and gave that defiant pump. And I thought, oh, wow, he's fired up. And then as he came closer and closer to us, I could see the blood on his ear. And I was like, oh, my gosh, he's been shot in the ear. And then as he was, there was that moment where he was very defiant. And then literally the next second, the look on his face was just complete shock. And, just looking out at what all the crowd is out there, and he's seeing everybody scattering everywhere. So it was just a horrific moment.
And Doug, we know more than 24 hours later now, you've had a chance to study your images. Could you even believe that you captured that one image of what appears to be, one of those bullets so close to the former president's head?
Yeah, David, it was one of those moments. I obviously didn't know it. So we were holding that tent. I was sending my pictures from my Sony camera back to the New York Times. And obviously the first pictures I wanted to send were the ones showing him defiant and coming off and alive. So I sent those, and then it dawned on me, it was like, oh my gosh, I think I was taking pictures while he was, while this whole thing happened, the pop, 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 and when the shots rang out. So I called one of my editors, Jen Mossbacher, and I was like, Jen, I'm sending you images that show him falling after he was hit. And she called me back about 5 minutes, David, and just said, "Doug, you won't believe this." And I was like, "What?" And she said, and I thought I had done something wrong or I'd messed something up. And she said, "You actually have an image of the bullet passing behind his head." And I got chills. I was completely stunned.
Really is stunning that you captured it, and I think we've all seen that image now. And Doug, you know the temperature in the country. You've seen it, deeply polarizing times. Did you ever fear this?
I never feared this happening at a political event. I've thought about maybe there's a possibility from like a roadside or somebody would shoot at either the president's limousine, and I never, because there's so much security around. So the fact that this guy was able to climb up on that roof and get a shot off is pretty remarkable.
Well, Doug, you've covered presidents for 40 years now, and I wish you many more years covering presidents, and we're just glad you're safe, Doug. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. I appreciate you having me.
Doug Mills of the New York Times with us tonight, and an extraordinary series of images that will be remembered for many years to come. Our thanks to Doug Mills. President Biden addressing the nation from the Oval Office just a short time ago, the president strongly condemning the attempt on Donald Trump's life, urging unity during a time of deep divisions. President Biden saying there is no place in America for this kind of violence. Here's our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce.
President Biden coming before cameras in the Oval Office tonight, condemning the shocking attempt on Donald Trump's life, saying there is no place for this kind of violence in America.
My fellow Americans, I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. We're neighbors, we're friends, co-workers, citizens, and most importantly, we're our fellow Americans. We must stand together.
In the midst of this divisive presidential campaign, the president attempting to lower the temperature.
A former president was shot, an American citizen killed, while simply exercising his freedom to support the candidate of his choosing. We cannot, we must not go down this road in America. There is no place in America for this kind of violence, or for any violence ever. Period. No exceptions. We can't allow this violence to be normalized.
Overnight racing back to the White House, Biden this morning briefed in the Situation Room by his Homeland Security team and law enforcement officials. The president now imploring the country to come together.
But in America, we resolve our differences at the battle box. That's how we do it, at the battle box, not with bullets. The power to change America should always rest in the hands of the people, not in the hands of would-be assassin. Here in America, everyone must be treated with dignity and respect, and hate must have no safe harbor. Here in America, we need to get out of our silos, where we only listen to those with whom we agree, where misinformation is rampant.
The president learned of the shooting while attending an evening mass in Delaware with his family. Biden promptly leaving the church on his way to be briefed by his national security team. 4 hours after a bullet grazed the former president, Biden speaking with Trump before boarding Air Force One back to Washington, cutting short his trip to Delaware.
Mr. President, what did you say to Trump? Mr. President!
Flanked by Secret Service officers, Biden back at the White House. His campaign pausing their attacks on Trump and pulling down existing ads. The president canceling a planned trip to Texas.
Mary Bruce with us live at the White House tonight. Mary, thanks for being with us here again tonight. What are your sources telling you from inside the Biden campaign, inside the White House, about how the president moves forward here? The campaign put on hold just temporarily, if for a day or two, to address the nation, to condemn political violence. How do they then re-engage? And how big of a theme will this be now? As we know, the images of Donald Trump will loom large in his campaign, getting off of that stage, surviving this horrific act, and President Biden making it clear that a key theme now moving forward for him will be bringing down the temperature in this country, which is not an entirely new theme for him.
Yeah, David, the president there tonight imploring Americans to cool down the political temperature in this country in that very heartfelt condemnation of violence in the country. The president has been responding to this as a president first, not a candidate. That will, though, change in the coming days. We do expect him to get back out there on the campaign trail. And I am told that he is going to continue to argue that ending political violence is a central theme of his campaign, that trying to bring Americans together to heal some of the division in this country, a theme that we have heard from him for years, is something else that he is going to continue to hit on. But he certainly recognizes the challenges ahead, David. The president tonight noting that the stakes get higher here, given what is at stake in this election, saying that that adds a greater burden to the country. And so the president is going to have to find a way to try and heal these divisions while making his points heard about what he thinks is at stake in this election. And, David, a critical test of that coming up, especially with the RNC starting tomorrow.
Well, let me ask you, Mary, as it pertains to the president himself, because, again, this theme isn't entirely new for him. There have been concerns within this administration. There have been warnings from law enforcement at the federal level that the rhetoric in this country had become too dangerous, that there was the chance of something like this or political violence along the way as we barrel toward another very intense, deeply polarized election in this country. What are your sources telling you from inside the White House about that initial reaction to what the president heard on Saturday that had happened to Donald Trump, and whether or not this was something that this White House had feared, not that it would happen to Donald Trump per se, but that something like this could happen along the way as they witness just how divided this country is?
I think political violence is certainly something that this White House has always feared, that this country has been fearing, as we have seen the rhetoric in this country become increasingly explosive. The president, we know, and scrambled. He raced out of church with his staff to get that briefing, then racing back here to the White House, cutting short his trip to Delaware to address this. He's been constantly briefed over the last 24 hours. And he made clear when he spoke out earlier today as well that he is trying, of course, to figure out and get to the bottom of how this was able to happen, but also to make sure that this can never happen again from a security perspective, while also urging the country and Americans to come together to cool things down and also ensure that the country can move forward peacefully. We can disagree, but it has to be peaceful, David.
Mary Bruce on President Biden addressing the nation from the Oval Office just a short time ago, joining a chorus of former presidents, both Republicans and Democrats, calling for an end to political violence. Mary, thank you. We know that 3 supporters were shot in that Pennsylvania crowd, 3 adult men who were attending that rally. One of them did not survive. Corey Comprador, a 50-year-old firefighter, husband and father of 2 daughters, remembered as a hero tonight. He had brought his family to the rally, and tonight his family says he died jumping onto his loved ones to protect them from the gunfire. Here's Whit Johnson.
At the Buffalo Township Volunteer Fire Company, black bunting hangs in honor of 30-year veteran Corey Comprador.
He's a guy with a smile that lit up a room, volunteered here for years, doing life-saving stuff for complete strangers, putting his life on the line.
Corey's uniform still on display in his locker next to those of his fellow firefighters. A day earlier, the 50-year-old husband and father was in the crowd with his family at former President Trump's rally as a hail of gunfire erupted. An attempted assassination against Trump. Corey killed in the chaos while shielding his family.
He was protecting his family from the bullets that were being fired, and he lost his life. God love him.
Corey was a girl dad. Corey was a firefighter. Corey went to church every Sunday. Corey loved his community, and most especially, Corey loved his family.
Today, Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro ordering flags across the Commonwealth lowered to half staff in recognition of the tragedy, speaking with Corey's grieving loved ones.
They have some very challenging times ahead of them. They will have an empty seat at the dinner table for the rest of their lives. But we need to make sure that Corey's memory is forever a blessing.
Corey's family posting tributes online. Those who knew him not surprised by his sacrifice.
Even if it was a complete stranger, it wouldn't have been a shock to know that he did everything he could to keep people safe. That's just truly the man he is.
And we heard that over and over again today, Whit, from anyone who knew him. Tonight, Corey Comprador's friends and family members are all saying he would reach out to anyone if they were in need.
Absolutely, David. And Corey worked as a maintenance foreman. His employer telling us tonight that he was the kind of guy who could make friends in a heartbeat and would do anything to maintain the safety of the people around him, calling this a huge loss for the community. David.
Whit Johnson with us tonight as well. Thank you, Whit. The events of the last 24 hours unfolding just before the start of the Republican National Convention, Donald Trump arriving in Milwaukee just a short time ago. In fact, the former president said late today that he considered delaying his trip before boarding his plane, but said he did not want a would-be assassin to affect his plans. So how will this shape the Republican convention over the next 4 nights and Donald Trump's campaign moving forward? Jonathan Karl tonight from Milwaukee.
Tonight, former President Trump arrived in Milwaukee, his schedule unchanged, his campaign transformed. The bloody and defiant images of the attempted assassination, now the defining images of his campaign. Security in Milwaukee is now even tighter following the monumental security failure in Pennsylvania, as the Secret Service conducts a top-to-bottom review of its plan for the convention. In a new post on social media, Trump says he thought about delaying his trip to Milwaukee, but, quote, I cannot allow a shooter or potential assassin to force change to scheduling. After canceling a major welcome reception last night, it's full steam ahead for the convention.
I asked him what his view was about changing any plans, and he said, no. We're not changing plans. We're going to move forward. I said, I got it.
Reince Priebus is the chairman of the convention host committee. He spoke to Trump earlier today. What's your sense on what Trump's going to be like when he takes the stage here?
I think it's going to be triumphant. I think his entrance into Milwaukee is going to be epic. And I think when you look at the party and the delegates and the people that are here already, they are determined and galvanized and super glued together in our support for the president. And obviously this grief that took place yesterday just hardens everybody's support for the president.
For now, political leaders on the left and right are largely in sync, denouncing the violence and calling for more civility and less hatred.
The rhetoric has just been over the top. It really has. Everyone needs to turn the rhetoric down.
Let's bring in John Karl now from Milwaukee. He's on the floor of the convention center. John, the Republican National Convention set to get underway tomorrow, and I know someone very close to the planning of this convention told you that this will continue with a, quote, vengeance.
The campaign, the convention will continue with a vengeance, is what I was told. There is clearly energy here. What happened to Donald Trump in Pennsylvania did not delay this convention. It did not change the schedule of this convention, but it injected an energy and an emotional value into this convention that will clearly be on display for the next 4 days. I think what's interesting here, David, is you heard the exact same language from the Speaker of the House, Republican Mike Johnson, and from the President, Joe Biden, obviously a Democrat, both saying it's time to turn the temperature down at a time when the temperature was already red hot, and usually it would be cranked up even higher because we're into the convention season. We'll see what's on display here and obviously as the Democrats convene later in Chicago.
And John, you know well, after covering Donald Trump for many, many years, that he consumes the coverage more than really any of us do, any average American certainly, and fully aware of the images that have been playing out over the last 24 hours in this country and really around the world. You talked about the convention, the campaign embracing some of the energy off of simply just surviving what we watched transpire in Pennsylvania. In fact, the fundraiser that went out within hours last night saying, I will never surrender. No question in your mind that these images will be used over the course of this convention up on those video screens and as part of the messaging moving forward.
Oh, David, there is no doubt about that. That image, those images from Pennsylvania will be the defining images of not just this convention, although certainly this convention, but they will be the defining images of the Trump campaign. The question is, will the tone and the rhetoric, what will that be while those images play out? I thought it was notable and very important to hear from Melania Trump today, to hear her statement, her talking about how gratified she was to hear tributes and concern from people across the political divide. And then in Pennsylvania, you heard Governor Josh Shapiro, who is as ardent a supporter of the Biden-Harris campaign as anybody. He is one of the national co-chairs. To hear him give such an emotional and moving tribute of the Trump supporter who was killed in Pennsylvania. These are very important moments
going forward. And the challenge is, can that kind of tone continue in a campaign where the stakes are as high as they were 2 days ago? To divide in our country is as deep as it was 2 days ago. Can it be done in a way with less hatred and with no violence?
Jonathan Carl with us in Milwaukee. The whole team will be joining you there, John, myself included. We'll see you in the next 24 hours. Thank you. When we come back here, we have news on the dramatic takedown of the gunman. Martha Raddatz is standing by with her reporting. This was the first time a Secret Service sniper has taken out a would-be assassin, and what Martha has learned tonight. And we're going to take you inside Donald Trump's inner circle. We have new reporting here. For the first time, we're hearing what the dynamic was like inside Trump's motorcade as it was pulling away from that rally, and what played out at the hospital where the former president was taken to be checked out. We'll have more on that in just a moment as our special report continues here on ABC.
Trump assassination attempt, minute by minute. Here again, David Muir.
Tonight we are learning more about something never seen before. For the first time, a Secret Service sniper making the split-second decision to take down a would-be assassin. Martha Raddatz on how this unfolded.
My guys, take a look at that chart.
It is exactly what these counter snipers train to do. But this was the first time in history, according to a former senior agent, that a Secret Service sniper killed a would-be assassin. But clearly a shot too late. In the moments leading up to the deadly shooting, you can see those two counter snipers scanning for threats in their positions on the rooftop behind former President Trump. Their high-powered rifles appear to be pointed in the direction of the gunman's position on an adjacent building overlooking the rally. Within seconds, chaos.
He's going down! He's on the roof!
Stand here. He's on top of the roof. Don't go over there.
The sniper appears momentarily startled by the gunfire, his face leaving the scope, but then quickly recovering and taking out the would-be assassin.
There's no room for error, so that shot placement has to be absolutely precise.
We can see the guy there.
Authorities saying this is the lifeless body of the shooter on the roof of that building. According to a former agent, Secret Service counter-sniper teams should have scoped out and advanced all those areas where there were potential threats beforehand and known what the line of sight to Trump could be.
The fact that somebody was able to get within 200 yards with a rifle and be on an exposed rooftop, be seen by other people there, be seen by where it should have been cameras and drones and many other things in place, to watch for that, something broke down. That shooter with that rifle should have never been that close to the former president of the United States at a venue like this.
So let's bring in Martha Raddatz on that point tonight. And Martha, you said it would be up to a Secret Service sniper team to have surveyed those buildings even beyond the perimeter, the security perimeter there. And the other question, though, is even if they had, is there an explanation as to why they wouldn't have seen that suspected shooter suddenly appear on the roof during that rally? This was some 8 minutes into the rally.
David, it's really unclear why they did not see him sooner. He obviously had time to climb onto that rooftop with a rifle, get in position to shoot, take aim, and fire off rounds that were accurate enough to come very close to killing former President Trump, David.
And Martha, you've covered so many of these political rallies yourself. I've covered them as well, and we've been in those crowds. And almost as reporters, I mean, we're not on the lookout, certainly, but you generally do look at the perimeter. It's something that you're kind of drawn to, particularly in your line of reporting as our global affairs correspondent. You've been to war zones all over the world, and in the midst of this very deeply divided country, you almost out of curiosity look around, which is why it's not surprising that there have been initial reports that a witness or two might have spotted something suspicious up on top of that roof, because it really wasn't that far away.
It really wasn't, and in fact, I think initial reports had it even farther away, but it was about 150 yards, and there were people gathered around that area. I'm in Washington, D.C. I see the president all the time and motorcade, so just as you say, David, we're very aware of that, and ourselves looking around in that kind of environment, and witnesses do say they saw the shooter somewhere near that rooftop, David.
And you have to wonder, Martha, before I let you go, about the political campaign moving forward, really for both campaigns and how these rallies, certainly the temperature, if the rhetoric is dialed back at all, given the calls from both the Trump campaign and the Biden campaign tonight, but from a security perspective, how that will change moving forward as well.
Well, the Secret Service, I've really never seen so many law enforcement officials, former law enforcement officials especially, saying publicly that this was a failure on the part of the Secret Service. So they will certainly try to double down what they are doing. Again, as you said, David, so eloquently, they responded very well to this attempt, but were not proactive enough, according to officials. David?
Martha Raddatz with us again tonight for our coverage. Martha, thank you. As we reported earlier in the special, former President Donald Trump has arrived in Milwaukee tonight for the Republican National Convention. Tonight, we're learning more about the moment the Secret Service was able to get the former president to safety and place him in that SUV. What was happening in the motorcade as they sped from that rally. Let's bring in our executive editorial producer, John Santucci, who has covered Donald Trump for many years for us. And I'm curious, John, you can see in those images, particularly by Doug Mills of the New York Times, who described from just a couple of feet away from the president, certainly, the vigor that he showed in the moments afterward, the fist in the air. But he also described the pure shock that he saw on the president's face as well, as the president looked out at what was left of that scattered crowd as he was being rushed off the stage. Any insight? What are your sources telling you about the former president once he got in that motorcade and when he realized just how dire this could have been?
Yeah, David, those images by Doug Mills really capturing Donald Trump's emotion, according to my sources. Dazed, confused, but as sources pointed out to me, David, you see Secret Service agents almost getting a bit of pushback from Donald Trump trying to get him into that SUV. I'm told by my sources, Donald Trump at least realized he was okay, he was alive, and he wanted to at some point stay with the crowd, which is why you see a little bit of that tug of war with Secret Service as the former president is putting his arms up into the air. David, I'm told by my sources that as he's there, it's the blood that actually caught his eye. That's what Donald Trump realized.
And with just a few seconds left here, John, you've also learned tonight that there was a CAT scan performed when he got to the hospital?
Yeah, I'm told, David, almost moments after Donald Trump arrived to that hospital in Pennsylvania, he received a CAT scan just to ensure everything was fine. But David, as his son, Donald Trump Jr., told me, the mood quickly changed. He was pretty happy.
John Santucci with us tonight as well. John, thank you as always. So what does this presidential race look like moving forward? Our final thoughts here in a moment. Tonight, 24 hours now after the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, Trump is now in Milwaukee, ready to begin the Republican National Convention. President Biden has signaled that he will begin his campaign again starting on Tuesday after pausing for this moment in this country to ask for Americans across this country to stand united on denouncing political violence in this country. Let's bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. And you heard this message, Mary, from President Biden, from past presidents, both Republicans and Democrats. You heard it from former President Trump as well, this call for unity. It seemed that there was an echo in this message that we can have our opinions in this country. We should embrace them, but we should be respectful of one another and all try to bring the temperature down.
David, the president today saying that all of us are now facing a time of testing as the election approaches. How this country passes that test, so much of it will depend on how these candidates handle themselves going forward, David.
Mary Bruce at the White House. We'll see everyone from the Republican convention tomorrow night. Good night.